So howdy doody everybody. Welcome to the Writers Hangout. I'm Konstantine, yes, and with me is Pat Scaramuzza. Now, correct me if I miss anything. He is the author of the webcomic Genocide Man, my personal favorite webcomic ever, and the author of multiple other titles, which he'll go over with us.
Well, been involved in two other webcomics and then some science fiction novels that I've just put out. So,
Yeah, Indefensible Opinions, and what's the other one?
I was involved in Crossover Lord, which was a collaboration with the characters from Indefensible Positions and some others. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
so
yeah, Mind Mistress and some of the other big webcomics of the time. It's kind of lost in the ether at this point, but it was a neat comic.
yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the I'll say golden age of webcomic stuff has kind of like been lost to the ether. It's actually a miracle. Like Genocide Man has stayed online. Like we've lost so many other stuff. Like for example, the parking lot is full, which was amazing. We've lost. God, there's so many other webcomics I used to read, and I can't even recall them now. How tragic is that?
Well, it costs money to keep things up on the internet. And if the comic doesn't bring in any money, there's very little incentive to keep paying every year. Um, so,
Would you ever consider printing Genocide Man or Indefensible Positions?
I have considered printing Genocide Man. I actually did bring out the first 5 chapters as a digital comic on Amazon, but they didn't sell very well. And it was very difficult to create, a lot of work to do that. But I have considered now that the technology is here of making a trade paperback of Genocide Man. Thinking about that now.
Please do. Like, just a second it happens, I'm getting it. It's
Okay.
no doubt about it. But before we go into that, before I keep nerding out about Genocide Man, let's take things from the top. First off, Pat, who is Pat? What do you do?
So I'm a scientist. My wife likes me to say I'm a rocket scientist, but I'm not a rocket scientist. I work with satellite calibration. So I work with the satellite that the rocket carries up, not the rocket itself. So, and I'm employed by the Landsat program in the U.S. So we look at climate change, crop health, mapping, all sorts of things that you can see from orbit. So.
Oh, that's absolutely so. That's very cool. So, is this part of like meteorology? What do you specifically do? Do you
So my degree's in general physics, so I don't really have a specialization. I worked with calibrating the satellite, making sure that the colors are correct, that we understand the actual radiance coming off of it, so we can use it in scientific applications. I'm also working in image identification. We're working on algorithms to detect clouds in satellites. We want to throw the clouds out. We want to get rid of the clouds in the imagery, and other features like burned area, where there is snow and ice. Some mineral detection we can do, and that'll be better with the new satellites coming up. So
that sounds awesome. Sounds amazing. This is a great job to have. So
it,
I don't know why you wouldn't call yourself a rocket scientist though. I mean, like
I,
instant
I don't work.
icebreaker.
Yeah, I don't work with the rockets. My wife loves it when I say that, but I'm not. I don't work with the rockets. I help design the satellites. I don't design the rockets.
That sounds pretty cool. So, given your background, because like a lot of hard sci-fi authors aren't really scientists. It's the funny dichotomy with sci-fi writing. The hardest sci-fi authors are not actually scientists. They're just science nerds. Greg Egan, for example, he's just an enthusiast. While the actual scientists that write, science fiction, they go toward like the softer side. They kind of like go toward the rubbery end of the science fiction.
Yeah, some of them. There are some hard science fiction authors writing science fiction, but they're not very good because they tend to be very dry. And the name that comes up for me is Robert Forward, who
Uh,
did the Neutronium Alchemist series.
oh yes. I had read it some time ago and I'd forgotten about it because it's very hard. It's kind of it's hard sci-fi in the sense that it's a struggle to get through,
Yeah,
especially.
it's very dry writing, but he's he does very well, and he's a scientist. So
Yeah, I
um,
mean,
David Brin is a scientist, and Peter Watts, but they don't they tend, well, David Brin certainly tends more towards the soft side, as you said. Peter Watts tends towards horror.
I mean, Peter Watt's story is kind of like go off the deep end, like after the halfway point. But let's not get
I
into
love
that.
Peter Watts. Yeah,
No, I know. I look. I really like Blindside too, but
yeah,
like you reach a point where you're like, okay, buddy. Just I reached the point where I was like, okay, buddy, that's too much. When we got into like the psychic vampire just multi-classing, I was just like, it was just a little much for me. But all right, so you're a scientist by day and you're an author by night. So what have you been working on? How did you decide to do this? Is it just like a hobby to you? Did you ever consider doing it as a career?
By the time I started writing, I was already employed as a scientist. So if ever my writing brought in enough money to replace that income, I'd switch, but it hasn't come near that. So yeah, I just published something for fun in the 90s. On I published it online, and then a magazine, Inquest, found it and said, "Can we publish this in our magazine?" So I got paid for that, and that was great. And I just started writing after that. So
Inquest was kind of a big deal.
yeah,
I remember I only caught it like a little bit toward the end. I never got published in it, but because when I started, to paraphrase Tony Soprano, I kind of came in at the end. So unfortunately, the publishing industry as we knew it has kind of like petered out. So I understand your point where you wouldn't choose to become an author full time. It's becoming like an extremely difficult enterprise these days unless you're going through self-publishing. Traditional publishing has gotten very difficult.
yeah. And the number one skill for an author right now is being able to market yourself, which is
Yes.
a skill I've never developed. So
Well, I mean, to be honest, most of us haven't. So a
yeah,
lot of us have been trying, myself included. So, I
yeah.
can't blame you for trying, but you still have made some pretty great stuff. So, when did you get into like comic book writing? When did you get into making your own web comics?
That would have been indefensible positions. I just sat down and started doing a web comic, and there was a easy service for that online at the time was Keen Space, turned into Comic Genesis later. So it was simple to put up images and turn them into a comic. And
Yeah,
I
which
had an
was
idea. Yeah, I had an idea in my head, and I just rolled with it. My art
so.
was terrible.
I mean, look, it was the style at the time. To quote The
Yeah,
Simpsons, like most of the web comics where people just love to tell a story, they wanted to do that. They couldn't afford an artist, or they couldn't find, they couldn't make art, consistently at the high quality that everyone wanted. So they did their best. You did your best. So I had a question about indefensible positions. So indefensible positions, because of the way it's laid out the story and how it deals with things, and how uh, for context, anybody who hasn't read Indefensible Positions, A, you should, but B, it is a story that kind of bridges a gap, that kind of like mixes something between the Invisibles, Grant Morrison's Invisibles, and Maids of the Ascension, where essentially you have a group of yeah, it's sort of goes
yeah.
that's the style. So essentially you have a group of awakened people who are able to interface with the metaphysical, and they fight against a lot of, I'm overgeneralizing, they fight a lot of spirits that represent some fundamental forces in the universe, and a lot of the story takes place like in the land of metaphor. It sounds very hoity-toity, but really it's very well read. It's one of the better ones actually in this style. It's because initially when I was reading it, I was afraid of Gaimanisms, what I call Gaimanisms, which is the Neil Gaiman style, where people say a lot without getting anywhere.
This was before Neil Gaiman really hit it big, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's he's nothing like it. He does a much better job. Trust me, guys. I've read through the entire thing. So, did you have any of those influences? Did you like read any Gaiman? Did you play any Maids of the Ascension? Did you read any Grant Morrison at the time, or was it just a thing? Like,
My comic reading at that time was, well, so I read comics as a teenager, and then I sort of dropped them, and I didn't pick them up again until later. And mostly I did X-Men at comics. That was my big thing when I was a teenager. I did play Meiji Ascension briefly, like 2 games. And Gaiman, I don't think I registered Neil Gaiman for a long time. I think not until Fables, which was later than Indefensible Positions.
When did Indefensible Positions come out? I'm sorry, I don't recall. Was it in the 90s? Was it early aughts?
No, it was early aughts. I think it was 2002.
Early aughts. So Fables had come out, but Gaiman wasn't. I don't think Gaiman ever wrote for it extensively. It was just like a couple of stories, as far as I recall, by that time.
Okay, that was Willingham.
It's an interesting case of like parallel creativity, because there's no such thing as an original idea. It's just nobody just has the one idea that nobody else has ever done. That's why I was curious about this, and I wanted to ask you about this.
Human being share brain wavelengths. That's just the way it is.
I tell this to a lot of people when they're writing, and they're like, I want to come up with an idea that's my own, or I still hear the more catastrophic thing, which is
you're limited by your meat. You're going to come up with something that the meat comes up.
But also there's also the issue that a lot of people are like obsessed with making something original. And like I'll talk to people who'll say, I don't read anything, I don't play any games, so my ideas are wholly my own. And every time I'm like, originality is for amateurs. Like if you're a professional, you care about spin. You take something that's there and you make it your own. You don't waste your time with this. But it's very interesting for Indefensible Positions. That's why I wanted, like I said, that's why I wanted to ask you, because an interesting game of like parallels. How I don't know if it was like the style at the time, but I was always like curious how you ended up with this idea. Did you ever consider like making like a sequel?
I had an idea of going into each of the characters, like giving them each a short run miniseries, like one for Skeeter, one for Orbstar. Each of the characters would get their own miniseries, and we just go into have them have a little starring moment, which actually Indefensible Positions more or less structured that way to begin with. Each character had a chapter.
Yes.
But I thought about extending that a bit, but I never went into it.
That's all right. That's all right. I still think it's a pretty good story, and it has like a good solid length. And then you made Genocide Man. So I will just gush very quickly about this. I found out about Genocide Man completely by accident. I just saw you'd made like this single pager that's kind of like synopsized the timeline leading to Genocide Man. So for people who haven't read this, Genocide Man is essentially a cyberpunk story in anything but name, where we're talking about the grim darkness of the near future, where humanity has made AIs. It was a terrible idea, as it turned out, as we're seeing right now, but it was even worse than Genocide Man. And on top of that, someone open sourced the human genome. So then everybody started making monsters, and a lot of awful things happened. Which led to
solved those problems.
Exactly, they solved those problems with the help of the Genocide Men, which were these, for lack of a better term, super duper cyborg people who were in charge of destroying these weird mutant, geniuses that people would create in the DIY, which is such an awesome concept. Like, how'd you end up with that? I gotta know.
Well, Genocide Man actually came out of Indefensible Positions. Indefensible Positions, they were characters who exemplified ideas. They were ideas. And what came up several times in the comics, you can't kill an idea. There's no way to kill an idea. And after a while, I thought, there is a way to kill an idea. You kill everyone who holds that idea. That's the only way you can kill an idea. And
I mean, you can't argue with that, yeah.
The Genocide Men were the concept of there are ideas that need to be killed. The idea you could improve the human race, or you could make them monsters, and the only way to stop that is just kill all the monsters and kill all the people who made them. So that's where that came from. And then I started structuring off of that. So.
Which is it's such an amazing concept, and I really like the idea of like it never becomes preachy. At no point does it do that. It has you have a very interesting knack for world building, which I also saw in Indefensible Positions, but it was earlier, so you hadn't develop that skill. In Genocide Man, you kind of went through it, and I assume you've been following through. You have a very good, you have a great ability to provide context to the world building without too much exposition, without explaining things, without going into too much detail, without wasting time into like developing the history. It appears very naturally, which kind of brings me to the fact of like, what's your process when you're building the world for your stories? Do you do this ahead of time and you kind of like place them in, or do you just figure it out as you go?
Little of both. I keep I work with beats, so there's a beat that has to happen here in the story, beat that has to happen here, and then the trick of writing is the transitions between the beats that you know exist. And to get those beats, you have to structure the world ahead of time. If at the end of the story, this has to happen. Well, the world has to allow this. So, but sometimes, yeah.
So it's a little rubbery.
It's a little rubbery. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
That's a pretty cool idea but at least in Genocide Man, it did not feel, because a lot of the time, what I'm saying is like, this is a very difficult balance to hit, because you see it especially in stories that are serialized for a long time, where things get retconned, especially comic books. You mentioned X-Men. You've seen it happen. I'm a DC guy. I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times before I gave up. It's a very difficult like balance to kind of hit and kind of do. And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about how you hit this balance, how to make it sound realistic while you're developing the world and make it sound like it's something you intended to do.
I think that balance is easier to hit if you commit to having an end. A lot of comics, they have to retcon, they have to make things change because they don't want to end. They want to keep on going for decades. But I can see both Indefense Positions and Genocide Man as a story with an end. And it's easier to say, well, this is where it's going to end. Everything between here has to be consistent with itself. You just don't, you can't change things. I know in chapter 16, you have to have chapter 16, consistent with everything else. So if you've got an end, you're coming to having a story with the beginning, a middle, and end. It's easy to make those pieces align than if the story doesn't really, end. It just keeps going. So
yeah, it does. It's kind of an issue, because if you're writing by the seat of your pants, which is something that a lot of people do, I'm guilty of it as well a lot of the time. The hardest part when you're writing a story is making the outline, committing to the outline, go on.
I disagree. I know they're in the writing community. They're called the pantsers and the plotters. People who write by the seat of their pants, and the plotters are people who plot. I'm a plotter. I plot my stories out, except for one,
which we'll get to in a little bit. I just want to know about your method.
Yeah, I plot my stories out, and I try to stick to that framework as tightly as I can. So,
which is keep in mind, that's not an easy skill to do, and I don't think it's just being a pantser. And I honestly think that it's kind of like a dichotomy that's a mistaken dichotomy, because outlines are very hard to do to begin with, unless you have a specific brain configuration that lets you do it and lets you stick to it and lets you understand how to make the story. It comes with experience, and it comes with having an eye for it to do it. Because a lot of the time everybody's like, oh, a lot of the time, like I'll be talking to writers and they'll be saying like, I want to do the scene and I want to end it with like a dead guy falling from the ceiling going like splat. And I'm like, okay, sure. But like, what's in the scene? How did it lead to that? He says, well, we'll figure it out. It goes like, or I'll talk to a writer. They're like, oh, it's going to be this cool scene. The camera's going to pan, and there's going to be like a big monster, and it's squeezing all his blood out in a lake that's also made of blood. I'm like, okay, but what's the thing? He's like, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So we'll figure it out.
You mentioned skills, and I think
yes,
the part of writing that maybe the most difficult is learning skill for something that no one else knows, and that's no one else knows how you want to write. So you don't know whether you're a pantser, whether you're a plotter. You don't know how your writing will evolve and how it will lay out. So you have to learn the skill to adapt to what you want to do. and that's a difficult thing.
Yeah, because even if you do an outline, and even if you do a perfect outline, and that's true in every type of writing, you planned out everything like meticulously. You have like your charts, you have like everything, and then you write the story. And as you're doing it, you start to realize like connections form and things happen that are much more interesting than what you made. And I have not, for the life of me, met a person that's gone like, no, it's on the chart. We'll go back. We'll do it like the chart says. I have not met a single person that's done this, and it is, yeah. No, no,
Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens.
yeah,
So
exactly. So like you find connections with the characters that it's difficult for you. Like you said, we're made out of meat, and I was trying to look for the story. Terry Bisson, by the way, guys, amazing story. Everybody should read this. Um, so did you do? You said you did another webcomic, Crossover Lord.
we did Crossover Lord was between In the Fence Positions and Genocide Man. Just a bunch of people at Comic Genesis got together and wanted to do a team comic, like Secret Wars or one of the big superhero crossovers, where all the superheroes come in from other dimensions and they gang together um, and fight some big evil. So I'm trying to remember from memory. It was the Ant, Mind Mistress. What was his name? Linkara was the author, but
Oh, Linkara Lightbringer.
Lightbringer, yes, Lightbringer, and he was actually the person who started this. He had the idea, and he was his villain that we were fighting. And
By the way, for anyone that please continue. I just want to give context to the audience because most people won't know who Linkara is. Listen to this. Please keep going.
okay, yeah. So and there were a couple others that joined in this little comic team up, and it was fun. I wrote some sections of it, and they wrote some sections of it, and we each drew parts of it.
Was it completed? Because
It
you
was
know.
completed.
Oh, that's okay. Another thing that's very impressive about you, you've completed all your webcomic projects because God bless us. You know, everybody's been trying something, and most people can't finish something, yeah, especially in early internet. So many unfinished stuff.
Not all of them. I've got the new webcomic that I've just started, and I'm having a hard time completing. So
That would be the one on your website. I was just reading it today.
Captain Bedlam.
Yes, Captain Bedlam, which is an exercise in watercolor, which looks very nice.
It is an exercise in watercolor, but I've decided I'm not going to do watercolors anymore. I'm going to go to traditional computer art from now on because I'm red green colorblind. So
Oh.
I'm having a lot of trouble with the
It's it,
watercolor.
no, it's fine. I am too. So I get you. I get
Yeah,
the
I
software
thought it would
thing.
just be fun to do, but the inconsistencies in physical material are driving me nuts. If I choose a red pen from one manufacturer and a red pen from a different manufacturer, they bleed differently into the yellow, and I don't know what I'm doing. So
It is still a pretty fun story. It's a pretty fun story. I've read the first five pages so far. So it's I think it's a good take.
it's just a fun thing. It's there's no weight or deep thought to Captain Bedlam. That's just
You're
mayhem. So
you're pantsing. You're pantsing.
yeah, I'm still plotting it out, but I'm just having fun. I'm not trying to because another thing I put in my series is some kind of theme. Like I talked about indispensable positions. How do you kill an idea? Genocide Man, this is how you kill an idea, that sort of thing. Some sort of deep thought in there. Um,
How do you make
and
an idea? How do you spread an idea? That's a good one.
yeah,
Go into a
yeah.
prequel.
But there's no deep thoughts in Captain Bedlam other than Nazis are bad. So
I mean, Nazis are bad, so I mean, it's a good start. I don't know if it's a running theme. Oh, by the way, we didn't explain. Linkara was a comic book reviewer who was pretty famous around the time the Crossover Lord came out, so it kind of helped. One of his first comics were Lightbringer that Pat included in the crossover. So you worked on web comics, and then I assume you took a very long hiatus. We spoke some time ago. You I don't know if you recall. I'd sent you an email because I really, really liked both Indefensible Positions and Genocide Man. I'd sent you an email nerding out because they were in my head and I had to let you know.
Oh,
Yes, and I remember telling a friend of mine, "Oh, there's this comic, Genocide Man. It's amazing." And he says, "No way, it's amazing." Like he told me, "You don't like shit." And I told him, "No, this one is good." So that's how I ended up calling you. So you took a long hiatus, as I understand it. Like you got into writing, you got distracted, life happened.
sort of. I started writing in 2007, and Genocide Man I started in 2011, 13, somewhere around there. I have to double check. Um, so I started writing prose novels because I was hoping to actually sell something and find an audience that way. And I kept writing while doing Genocide Man, although it's a little slower. And then when Genocide Man ended in 2016, I had finished two novels, and then I wrote the other two since 2016. So
Which were those first ones?
the first one was Wally, um, and then the second one was Platinum Donkeys. Those I finished before Genocide Man ended.
So what's up with those? What's can you give us like a short rundown?
Well, so I wrote Wally because I went to a writer's workshop and they said one thing that isn't out there right now is young adult space opera. Okay,
That's true. There's
no,
only the one. There's only
there's
the one
very
that's a really big name. Ender's
you're
Game.
talking about Star Wars?
No, Ender's Game.
Oh, Ender's Game?
Ender's Game is young adult. It's like the kid's like
Yeah,
teen. He does a little genocide. He does a little bit of it like
okay.
this and that. Yeah, it's
I can see that. It's
yeah.
got some pretty weighty stuff, but yeah. Yeah. Um anyway, they said there's almost no young adult space opera out there. So I sat down to write a young adult space opera. And this is my first novel, and I tried to get it published. It's now I can see the flaws. I can see there's a lot of flaws in here, but it's still a beautiful story, and I got a lot of good reviews on it. So
There's one quote by Warren Ellis who says, "You do your best editing after the book's out." So
yeah,
it's too late for that. So what's Wally about?
Wally is about so in the future, mankind has found two other alien species, and it turns out that different alien different species have different physics. Physics changes depending on what alien there is. So there's these huge aliens who live in outer space, and they basically ignore the laws of thermodynamics. They can generate energy, and that's right. There's another one which is, I'm a scientist. They ignore the inverse gas law, the ideal gas law, which
Explain this to me. I'm a troglodyte.
okay. The ideal gas law states that when you compress a gas, its temperature has to go up. If the volume goes down, the pressure goes up and the temperature goes up.
Yes.
Okay. If you expand, the temperature goes down, the pressure goes down. That's basically the ideal gas law. If you ignore that, you can have water guns in space. Normally if you shoot water gun in space, it freezes or it evaporates, depending on whether you're in sunlight or not, but how hot it is. But these guys are shooting water guns with acid. That's their main weapon, that sort of thing. And other neat stuff like that they can do. So
right. And what does Wally do in all this?
So while this is happening and mankind is in war with one of these species, they're also sending out colony ships, dropping colonies on worlds, just try and explore and colonize out there. Something like the Fallout, the Fallout games.
Yes.
Each vault has different rules.
Yes.
Different special rules. Wally's colony has different rules, and basically they have a subclass of young people who are just menial workers, and I won't go into that anymore. But his colony, he is oppressed. He is basically starved, and he's worked all the time. But he found boots that let him walk on walls. Okay, so he uses that to become a thief, and he steals food and other things for his worker class people. And then the aliens drop on his planet, and he has to intermediate between the intergalactic war going, well, interstellar war going on. So he's a thief. He's got thief friends as an underprivileged group in his colony, and then the war comes to his planet, and takes a big role in that war.
Nice. That sounds pretty cool. And then you have the thing that's been the title has been like drawing my eye all the time, and like I did read the synopsis, and it was the two of the most interesting synopses that I saw on your website. But I want you to tell me about Platinum Donkeys. What's it about?
Let me first say that so Platinum Donkeys is my attempt at pants writing.
Okay.
I had a character, Maggie, on the cover, and I just wanted to write a story with Maggie, and I just, by the seat of my pants, wrote this out. And it turned out really good. It turned out at the end, I said, okay, I've got to end this thing. So I plotted like the last third of the book to get to an end. But yeah, Maggie is brilliant but insane. And it turns out it's just in the future where the government keeps track of people who are brilliant but insane, and tries to make them, sane by also limiting their brilliance, by also tamping down on the intelligence of geniuses out there to keep them under control. And Maggie is not the type that you can easily control. So
it does sound like a cross between Harrison Bergeron and Camp Concentration by Thomas Dish. I don't know.
Harrison Bergeron is a good analogy.
Yes,
it's a good comparison.
Yes, and it did sound. So what's with the title, Platinum Donkey?
So the idea is that this class of people, these brilliant but insane people, they're the platinum donkeys. They're brilliant, they're platinum, they're very valuable, but they're donkeys. They're ugly, they're stubborn, they're dangerous sometimes. So, and I play around with that a little bit, but that's what they call themselves. They're sort of a club called Platinum Donkeys who. There's a bunch of mad geniuses in there, mad scientists who decide to take over the world, and they're going to use Maggie as their queen. Is what the blurb goes. But
nice, very nice. So, and there was another book on your website. The title caught my eye, but I was like stuck. There's One Reason to Live.
One Reason to Live
and Chipper. Yes, every time I see it, every time I see the cover, I'm like, oh, this is a great cover. But every time I forget the title, and it was such a great concept. It sounded like you gave your own spin at the Harry Potter idea, sorta.
No,
kid goes to a magic school, sorta.
No. Chipper is my attempt at paranormal detectives. And the main character is Nita. She goes to regular school. She goes to Southern Cal.
Oh.
But Chipper is an occult professor there. He teaches occult history and that sort of stuff. And she meets him, and she notices that there's something really weird going on with this guy and with other things in Southern California, because there's a lot of strange things in Southern California. So this dives into Lovecraftian paranormal stuff. Not Harry Potter, more like the I'm terrible at bringing up names. There was a show on it. Anyway,
Lovecraft County? No, True Detective.
True Detective's one. I'm thinking of he's got a skull on his desk that talks to him all the time. Whatever. He's a wizard, and he's detective.
That does sound like Carnegie. No, wait, no, Carnegie wasn't like that. I'm drawing a blank as well. It's interesting for a person that's only played Maids the Ascension twice. You write pretty good Maids the Ascension stories, and I'm going to be bringing over for interview Phil Satiros, one of the writers of Mage, for the podcast. Yeah, I had to because like that game just the game haunts me. So I had to like bring him over, bring the guy, and it's very interesting that you can do this. given your background in science, someone would expect, you'd be, and I know it's a silly stereotype, but it would be like someone would expect that you're struggling with portraying the supernatural, because you would be stuck, on the, oh, how does this work? How do we make this, seem appealing? How do we make this make more sense?
I like taking unusual things and then changing the rules of physics to make them make sense. So that just
That's a pretty cool approach, because a lot of the times it happens. Like I said, the hardest sci-fi authors are not actually scientists, so it's just like science nerds. It's to kind of like go off the deep end, and it's not very interesting. And it happens with other people, and me included. When we write fantasy, we kind of like forget to make it fantasy. We kind of get caught into like, oh, the realism of it, and how would this work, and how would they get away with it in real life? How would this?
the old definition that they used to use between science fiction and fantasy was that science fiction had rules that you had that follow, and everything happened. There were recipes and ways to work things that followed rules. They might not be real rules, but they had them. And fantasy didn't have to have rules. That's changed nowadays. The mode in fantasy writing these days is for fantasy to be recipes and the rules of your magic system and that sort of thing.
God
I
help
blame
us.
blame Brandon Sanderson for a lot of that. But
it's not his fault. Like
no,
he's not faultless, but it's not entirely his fault. It's
no, but it's changed. And sometimes you don't want to have any rules. Sometimes stories are best when there's not any rules at all. And nowadays that's just surrealism. But that's what fantasy used to be.
That's kind of like it makes sense to want a world that's internally consistent, because that's what makes a good story. Things to kind of follow like an understanding, kind of follow the rules. You need to expect that some things will happen, even if it's something like very, very weird.
Yeah, but it's not consistency that I'm getting at. It's I want to say perversion. You may chant the ritual, and you may say, I'm doing this one and this is supposed to happen, and the elder god may say, no, I want this to happen. It may just change things around. Yeah, chaos. Chaos is a magical principle. We don't utilize chaos in science, or we know about it, but chaos is a magical principle that you do this and anything could happen. That's the way fantasy used to be, and now it's
which we very often, you're correct about this, and we very often forget about this. Like you said, the magic system, we kind of like get lost in this. I feel a lot of the time we've kind of like, especially when we show magic in in literature or other things, it's lost this zing. Like, for example, were you a big Fritz Leiber fan? Did you read a lot of
Swords of Blankmar?
Yeah, like Shieldbind and Gobble were these two super mutated weirdo wizards. They would show up, they would do something awesome, they would like reference something weird that they did, and then they would tell like Fafner and Grey Mouser, they would say, oh, what is that? And go like, none of your business. Just close the door in their face and it'll disappear.
Didn't need explanation. Those people could do that.
and we kind of like lost it. Like Lovecraft kind of had it a bit, but he kind of like got lost in the sauce. The person that I think got it the best, in my opinion, was Clark Ashton Smith. Because in all his stories, all his magic and all his wizards are like dangerous. They're weirdos. They're all these things. They know, they're people you're not supposed to trifle with. They're scary. They're exotic. And in the process, we kind of lost it. And I want to blame Dungeons and Dragons for that, because kind of like it made the wizard a class. It had to be like a player choice. Everybody learned this from that, and then it kind of like evolved from this, and people expected things. Then of course, so all this happened, and it's but what I'm talking about with like consistency is that we have chaos, we have this weirdness that might happen, but at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we need to understand things, and we need even like the weirdest story to be presented in a way that we're going to understand this.
Yes, but sometimes consistency is hidden from you. You may not, the reader may not understand it. I keep wanting to bring up Nick Harkaway, who did a book called Gone Away World. Gone Away World.
Yeah.
Nick Harkaway. He's a British author, and he writes chaos, like just the most chaotic, amazing things happening in the most interesting and rambling style. But it's all consistent. At the end, you see, oh my God, that all made sense, although it made no sense at the time.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm definitely putting this in my reading list because this sounds like very interesting. I'm just skimming over like the synopsis here, and it sounds
Yeah,
very good.
Harkaway also does detective noir novels, which aren't my genre. So he probably has other things that aren't what I'm describing.
I
So
mean, Jonathan Lethem also does this. He also does like noir, and all the stories he writes are also, full of this weirdness. But because they're consistent, because they're understood like in a, how should I say this? Like they follow a human baseline. They're all at the end of the day like fully human stories. They're not consumed with a spectacle or with a magic system. You're interested in them. You follow them. You are engaged. Um,
yep.
Give me one. So we talked world building. We talked magic systems. There's one other book we missed back there.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Yeah, One Reason to Live. So that was a very difficult book to write and again structure, but it's the near future. Aliens have come and they gave humanity immortality, so you can become immortal. You have to become an alien to become immortal. Most humanity took that choice. A couple didn't. A few people didn't. And this is the people who are left behind. Most humans have left the planet. They became aliens, left the planet. These are the people who decide, I don't want to be immortal. I don't want to be alien. I don't want to leave. But why am I here? Why? What reason do I have to live? And they're going through that sort of existential crisis. So, and that book, yeah. So this is my big thought book, the big theme book. I actually have a formulation for the meaning of life in that book that the characters figure out at the end. So
that is very interesting. This is the most interesting premise out of all of them. So yeah, go on.
It was I derived it from Clifford Simak, the City series.
Yes,
where he has
yeah, go on.
he has human beings become aliens on, I think it was Jupiter or some Jupiter-like planet. They can run around, and it's so huge they'll never explore it all, and most people just leave. It's an apocalypse you don't see very often, but occasionally.
It's yeah, we drift away. Simek was great at doing this, kind of like showing like the human. Even there was one in the City series which I really liked. It was essentially a guy and his dog, this ancient city. Then we're kind of like putting this together with just the two of them, kind of like whiling away their time. And you'd think this sounds like a terrible synopsis for a novel, but like I don't know, Simek was like a word wizard. I don't know, he could just make it work.
The end line of that story haunts me because they turn into these alien creatures and they're exploring this planet, and they're supposed to go back. And the guy says, I don't want to go back. They're going to turn me back into a man. And the dog says, and they'll turn me back into a dog. And they said, we're not going back. Actually, I think I flipped that. It was first the dog says, I don't want to be a dog. And the man says, I don't want to be a man anymore. But yeah.
That was, he always had a thing with endings. Like he was so great with endings. He did so much with like so little.
He could end stories. Simic had great endings. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could just okay. We'll just stop talking about Simic because we'll just go into this.
Sure.
But I miss. No, the reason I'm saying is that I wanted to interview you. Like we can nerd out about the old science fiction, but to be honest with you, more people should know about it. More people should read it. We've lost a lot of that charm now because a lot of people that I talk to refuse to understand that science fiction at its core, in my opinion, is socio-political satire. It like looks at our world and says, these are the things we're doing wrong. These are the things we want to do. These are the things that scare us. Let's take them to the extreme. Like, for example, Roadside Picnic, right? It's a story that says, what if we're not alone in the universe, but also like, what if the universe visited? We just, looted whatever they left behind. It's a story told by the side of like a scrounger, right?
Who's the author of
that? The Strugatsky brothers. It's the Soviet science fiction. I constantly talk to people about it. Don't shut up about it because Soviet science fiction produced so many great works. The Sugatsky brothers were the ones that we mostly know in the West. I think you're really gonna like it.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Road science fiction. It was adapted into Stalker, the movie. If you know, if
Okay.
you've heard of it, it's but my opinion, book is a much better option. So we talked about your very very interesting books. Which where can people get those?
Uh, Basically everywhere. They're on Amazon. They're on Goodreads. They're on all the platforms. Kobo. I don't know what's available in Europe, but I've tried to put them everywhere.
Are
So
they up on Lulu? That's
I'll have to check that. I'm not sure. I've used Draft to Digital, which is a way for independent authors to put their works on every platform that they can reach. So I know
I
they're
think
available.
that includes Lulu. It's usually
I,
better for like paperback.
yeah,
It's cheaper for us when it comes to us, and also authors. If you're hearing this, Lulu gives you a better cut for paperbacks. Just give you an idea. Just keep that in the back of your head. So 4 books, pretty good run, gotta say. So what are you working on now? Like what's
I've got some books I'm working on. I'm not sure. I'm having trouble finishing because things are very difficult and stressful right now where I am for various reasons. I just to mention, you can cut this out, but I work for a satellite program. I'm not working right now. Government's shut down, so I'm not. They're not.
I'll
I
keep it.
don't.
I'll keep it. If you want, I'll keep it out. It's fine. It's okay.
No, you can put it in if you want, but I don't know how long I'm going to be paid. It's up to
Yeah.
my. Yeah.
No, I understand. It's a very difficult situation. Like
But uh, so some of the stories I'm working on, I wanted to do a steampunk story set in a different era because most steampunk stories are set in Victorian England, which is the worst society I can think of. It's just terrible. So I set a steampunk story in the summer of love 1969, and it's going to end with a mech battle at the Woodstock music concert.
awesome.
So I'm working on that book right now
I've got to ask, why steampunk? Why not diesel punk?
because I hate it.
Okay.
I hate steampunk, and the things that I have trouble with, I like leaning into and saying, how can I make this work for me? So
Why the beef with steampunk? Personally, like no skin off my back. I've written steampunk stories. I've
yeah.
worked on them. It's not for me. It's not. It's no issue. But like, why can't you stand it?
I think I came down to the Victorian era. That's all. It's almost always tied to this Victorian proprietary and petticoats and all, and then the worst society in human history, more or less. One of the worst wealth inequalities and so on. So I wanted to I took the steampunk idea out of that society, and it's a lot more palatable to me. So
I mean, it is steampunk. A lot of it is the idea of like analog technology and kind of like how we fetishize it. And how it's not. Oh, it's not ones and zeros, man. It's like things that you make and they actually work. Like how are you approaching your steampunk idea? Because it's kind of broad. Not everybody just bases it in England. Like when I wrote one of the first stories I wrote was sort of steampunk, but I based it on Western Europe specifically.
okay.
It kind of like started from the Austro-Hungarian Empire and kind of like moved out. I know historically it doesn't make sense, but who cares? So that's why. How did you bridge it? Like, is it? Did you do like Kingsley Amish's like the alteration? Was it like based in the U.S.? How did you go about it?
What I have is steampunk is coming out of cold fusion technology. Pour water into a brass container, and it creates steam, and you can then work that into mechanics and such. And the cold fusion technology came from Russia in 1969.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
have a question again as a troglodyte. I thought cold fusion was when you achieve nuclear fusion in room temperature.
Yes.
So how does this work in steam? How does this go? Because I'm very interested.
the cold fusion that they tried in the late 90s, the idea was to have a metal that acts as a catalyst. So you pour water on the metal and it catalyzes the, you break the hydrogen and oxygen apart, and then it further catalyzes the hydrogen into deuterium. And that's the fusion part that releases energy. Okay. Palladium was used as a catalyst for that experiment. That experiment has since been, it wasn't a hoax, but it was a mistake. They thought they were creating cold fusion. What they were doing was reacting with the palladium, and the palladium was degrading as it was producing energy. So it was a chemical battery, not a cold fusion thing. But the idea of a metal that catalyzes water into deuterium and oxygen to release energy is the core of what I'm doing in the.
That is a very cool idea.
Yeah.
That's okay. So,
but I have the Russians inventing the cold fusion technology and then using it to infiltrate the West, and they're infiltrating the West by trying to enlist the musicians, the underclass, the counterculture of 1969. So all the hippies have steampunk stuff, and the authorities are like, where is this coming from?
They're putting this together, all this crazy stuff. I mean, that's such a cool idea. I like how you take these kind of like twists. I wouldn't have thought of like approaching this with the musicians. This would be something the Soviets would do, on the other hand, like, work from the underprivileged classes and kind of like use them to destabilize the U.S. So it's end of World War One. Moving into this so it's end of World War One. It's like height of the Cold War when your story takes place.
After World War II, height of the Cold War. Yeah.
So, this sounds like such a cool premise, though. I mean, I'm looking forward to it.
It's a great premise, but it's a difficult book to write because I want to hit the historical events of 1969, and there were a lot of them in America at the time. A lot of history was made that year, but I can't really show any of the famous people from the time because some of them are still alive and I don't want to get sued. So
if they're public personas, if they're politicians, if they're celebrities and they're well known, then I don't think this should be an issue for you. Like, you're not violating anyone's privacy. And
yeah, I'm trying to be careful. I'm trying to be careful. I think I can get away with it. I'm doing some musicians because you can't avoid the musicians and talk about, rock concerts. But I have changed the names of some people, like the promoters of the Woodstock concert. I've got new people to stand in for them. And
just change the letter.
I've changed a few things, but yeah, I'm just trying to be careful.
It's a weird situation with referencing historical characters, important people, because normally you're not violating their privacy. They're very well known. They're people known by millions in some cases. So you can't really violate, Richard Nixon's privacy. You couldn't you couldn't really violate Henry Kissinger's privacy. And there's like people saying worse things all the time, like political tracts, etc. I understand you're trying to be careful. I understand you're trying to dot your I's and cross your T's.
And the situation in America is whether or not you've broken the law, someone can sue you anyway. So just because they want your money.
Right. I mean, I don't know how much money you're making. I kind of doubt. A rocket scientist makes that much.
Not that much, no, but still.
It's not the space race anymore, guys. Like, they're not loaded. Just leave them alone. Leave them alone. That sounds like such an interesting project, though, for this one. I think also, if you want to ever consider working with something else, an underrated part of history that people don't look at as much, early 20th century, toward the 30s, because it was also a time of gigantic chaos, constant innovation. And I think if you ever look into it, I think you'll make something amazing with it, honestly.
Yeah, I've got a family story from that time, but I didn't thought of a science fiction route on it. My great grandfather came to the States in 1920s, back when they said, no Italians could apply for jobs, need not apply. So there's some family stories from that time that I could use in something, but I don't have any ideas yet.
I think they would be a great idea, and you do the human bent very well. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the authors are really like you all have like the same thing, where you kind of have a knack for presenting the human bent and the human interest, essentially, for the human side of the story. Because a lot of the time, a lot of people kind of like get lost in the spectacle, kind of get lost in the sauce. They're like, oh, this is an amazing setting. There's this cool guy. He does this. And there's a bunch of skeletons with swords. One kind of like gets lost in this. They don't understand why the way for a story to stick is you need to speak to the human experience. Yeah. And I don't see it as often now. There's also the fact that, you don't really get rewarded for planning stories anymore. For example, if you're doing self-publishing, you need to be pumping out words at a regularity. You need to be turning the crank, and that doesn't help if you're
trying to make a living from it. I'm lucky that I'm making a living from something else, and I'm doing these basically for my own gratification, just for fun. So,
well, I mean, I'm trying to invite over people from across the spectrum. My personal opinion, I mean, I write for a living, and I do not recommend it to anybody. My kids tell me they want to write for a living, and I tell them, no, you don't. And I'm slowly introducing them into the reality of that. They can do whatever they want, but it's good to have this open. Like,
yeah,
we should all know like what the reality is like. I still do feel that your work is criminally underrated. That's why I wanted you on, though, to be honest with you. And I really hope I can see more of your stuff in the comic books and in your novels. I know I'm getting your novels after this. Anything else in the future that you'd like to share? Like, how do you see the future for Pat?
Well, the only other book I have in mind for writing is a sequel to Platinum Donkeys, just because I think that one needs a sequel.
I mean, Platinum Donkeys too, just
the sequel would be the sequel would be Steel Elephants. So
nice. How come that? Why that choice of words?
The idea of something that, so they're giving these names to these people.
Yes.
And the idea of something that just overwhelms its ecosystem, something too big, too powerful, too indestructible to stop. The next book will feature one of those people. So
nice. That sounds very interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. One last thing. Have you considered adapting them to audio?
I wouldn't know how to do that. I thought about using AI, but the AI audio I've heard is not great for books. My voice is not cut out for doing this, but it's a thought.
I think you've got a good reading voice.
Okay, I could try it.
Like, you could give it a shot. I think it would help. I think it would help you reach more people. These are very interesting stories. So, Pat, thank you for coming over. It was a pleasure having you and talking with you. Hopefully more people will get to look at your stuff. You have some amazing things, that you shared with the world, and more people should read. So everybody make sure to read Indefensible Positions. Make sure to read Genocide Man. I promise it's a great story. Yep.
One note, read Genocide Man. I drew some of Genocide Man myself, and then I hired a professional artist, Michael.
Yes. You do mention it a bunch of times.
Yeah. But the art in that is amazing in the later chapters. Indefensible Position is all mine. The art is not good. So
look. Like I said. People tell me I don't like shit, and it's like, it's true. I don't like anything. I don't think art by itself should be the end all be all. I think if you can't see past the art to look at a good story, I think you should reevaluate how you approach the world.
Fair enough.
And whenever you feel bad about this, keep in mind, I don't know if you've heard of it. One of the most successful manga until recently was called One Punch Man, right?
Yep.
And that was written by a guy called One, and he's drawing it in a style that is like around the same level of you at Indefensible Positions, maybe a little worse because he did no color. It was just like monochromatic, just pens with this one. So a good story is going to shine through with the art.
But Michael Yakutis, and I should mention also Casey Cavedo, were my artists in Genocide Man. They make it much easier on the eyes.
Yes, it does help, but it is still a solid story. So you should read it. And of course, check out his books. Links will be in the description. Thank you for stopping over. Pat, once again, thank you for being here. And everybody have a good one.
Okay. Thank you, Konstantine.